Hi, Amy. Welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Chris. How you doing?
I'm good. Thank you. Today's guest is Amy Salomone. Did I say that right?
Yeah,
I didn't say
you
that right, did
did.
I? Salomone. No, Salomone?
Yes, it's Salomone.
Salomone. Okay. Today's guest is Amy Salomone, and her mixed media art is so visually compelling that when I stumbled across her Instagram page, I may have stayed there for an hour just looking through all her posts.
Aw, thanks.
Amy's
Thank
work
you.
dynamically fuses math, science, nature, space, and anatomy, and I can't wait to have her tell us her creative journey. So, Amy, where can people see your work and connect with you?
Sure. There's two good places for people to see my work. One is my Instagram, which is at forms underscore most underscore beautiful. And then the other one is my website, which is www.formsmostbeautiful.com. So those are the two best places to see my work.
Fantastic. And listeners, connect with Amy, and I appreciate if you hit the subscribe and like button for our show. So, Amy, I got a lot of questions about your art, but before we talk about your work, can you tell us about your background and how you found your way to becoming an artist?
Sure. And this is actually an interesting question because I think I maybe just started thinking about myself as an artist because most of my background is in science. So I was always interested in art as a kid. I love painting, drawing. That was definitely my thing. But when I went to college, I went to school for science for whatever reason one does things. And I ended up going to school for microbiology. And then I went to go get a advanced degree in virology, but I didn't like it. I ended up liking teaching because I was teaching at the time at the college. Sorry, this is my very roundabout way to answer your question. I'm sorry, Chris.
No, that's fine. I'm really interested in how a scientist
Okay, cool.
does art. Yeah.
Right. So I ended up coming back. I went to Brown for my master's in biology education and I started teaching. So I actually taught science for 16 years full time. And actually, that's really where my art background started to align with my science background because while I was teaching, I remember walking into the art room and just thinking, like, wow, this is really the environment that I want to be in. And, I already had an art background. I already knew I liked art. But at that point, I started taking a bunch of art classes. And that was a long time ago. I mean, that was like 17 years ago. So I ended up kind of like slowly taking a bunch of art courses. And it really culminated in the last year, well, in the last several years. I did a natural science illustration program at RISD and ended up using a bunch of the classes that I had taken. And so I just actually got that certificate recently. But I guess to answer your question, while I was doing that certificate, I ended up, unbeknownst to me, taking Photoshop and a digital design class and a collage class that I thought I would hate. Not the collage class. I knew I was going to love that because I love collage. I thought I would hate, and they ended up kind of changing the entire way that I think about creating something. And that's really how I became an artist, was realizing, like, honestly, how amazing those tools are that I can use and really create this whole universe.
Are you a full-time artist now, or are you still teaching?
I am not a teacher. So I was a teacher. I'm really trying to confuse you here. I was a teacher for 16 years. And actually, while I was teaching, I ended up making two science-based art classes at my school. So I ended up creating a whole arts program. One is an anatomical art class and one is a physiological art class. And then since then, I've kind of become the curriculum writer. So I actually create arts integration design classes. Like, we have a few different courses that we offer. And then I help teachers teach those courses as well as kind of integrating arts integration in the rest of the school. So that's really my full-time position. And then the art business, I do that honestly, like after work, on the weekends. Usually when I'm like lying in bed at the end of the day, I'll be making a collage, or obviously over the summer. So it's the end of the summer right now.
So, how was that transition in your mind when you said to yourself, "My career, so to speak, is pointing towards the art side of this"?
Right.
That must have been a pretty interesting shift.
Yeah, I think that I've always pulled towards the art side. That has always been like kind of my natural inclination. But also, like, I can't ignore this whole educational background that I've had. And for a while I kind of wanted to. And so, it was hard for me to figure out what my style was as someone who's creating something. But when I started to integrate everything that I've learned about the sciences through going to school for it, but more so through teaching it, and then kind of started communicating those ideas through art, that's when I really kind of found myself and really started thinking about myself as an artist, because I was creating something that was like unique to my own voice, as opposed to, me just kind of copying a style of somebody else.
Is there anybody that you were actually looking at as like a inspiration, or is your style unique to you? I'm not even quite sure if there's people like in your genre that does the type of work that kind of looks like yours.
So I found a couple people over the course of me making these pieces that I have been really heavily inspired by. I can't remember the name of one of them. I think his last name is Vicente, and he has a series of anatomical pieces where he has like women in 1920s, 1930s outfits, and he kind of does almost like a skin tear of their bodies. So you can see the anatomical form underneath it, but he is a fine artist. I hope it's a he, and I'm not just, insulting a female artist, but I'm pretty sure it is. And then also Alexandra Gallagher. She is a collage artist and a mixed media artist as well, and also a photographer, I believe. And so she's also heavily inspired the work that I make. I kind of found her after I started making the pieces that I make. And so it was a really nice, to see, really nice to see what she was doing, but also people that I see online really push me to try different things, which is fantastic as well.
So you've alluded it right there. You are a mixed media artist. And what is the final output? Is it a printed piece? Is it digital? Is it in a canvas? Like, what does that look like when it's all completed?
Right. So when I say mixed media, I'm usually talking about the process of making it. So some of the pieces that I make are 100% digital collage, even though I may be photographing pieces of ephemera, like ephemera being like, pieces of, let's say, paper, or even just a picture of a texture that I see that I think is really interesting. I may integrate those into collages. Like recently I was in the UK and my husband and I were in Westminster Abbey. And oh my God, if you ever get the opportunity to go to London, go to Westminster Abbey. It was unbelievable. But some of the pieces that I've made recently have integrated like the ceiling of Westminster Abbey into them. And so you wouldn't know it looking at it because it doesn't, there's no way to really identify it other than it's a texture I use. So they could be mixed media in that way, but also I will draw. So I will draw pieces of them, like pieces of ephemera, usually organ. I will render in like colored pencil, and then I will integrate them into a bunch of different collages. And then sometimes the end piece, just to answer your question, is digital. And then I might print it and embellish it from there. So I've tried like a lot of gold leaf techniques, and I feel like I need to, dip my hand into glitter without getting glitter all over my studio. So we'll see what happens there. It likes to get everywhere.
Well, let me ask you about your art pieces, because I went through your website now, and I love all your art pieces. But can we talk about the series called Atomic Shuffle? Even your write-up on this series on your website is pretty thought-provoking, and you write, these pieces communicate that atomic shuffle of creation, life, death, and rebirth or reimagining. They communicate a small part of a very large story.
Yeah.
Can you tell us about this series and the concept behind them?
Yeah, I think this series really sums up the strongest message in what I'm trying to say about what I make or why I make what I make. So really all the pieces that I make are kind of an invitation for people to look at them and start to look at the natural world as a integral part of it rather than like an onlooker, which I feel like we often do. Like we talk about animals as if we're not one of them. We talk about natural systems as if we don't depend on them. And like we talk about bacteria as if they don't make up an extremely large portion of our bodies and really control the way our bodies work. And so, and that's a really hard thing to communicate as someone with a background in science. You know that information, but to really change someone's perspective is what I'm trying to do when I create a piece and when I write about a piece on Instagram. So that series in particular, I don't remember where I heard about it for. I think it was Neil deGrasse Tyson. Do you know who that is?
Yeah, I do.
Okay, he is, for anyone who doesn't, he is an astrophysicist and he's a science educator, and he wrote a book called Death by Black Hole. And I think in that book he started talking about atom generation in stars. And so, or maybe it was because I was also teaching this too. So the idea that like atoms are created in the cores of stars through fusion, and then like once a star reaches a certain point of fusion, I'm not going to get into the specifics of this and bore everybody, but there'll be a supernova and then heavier elements are made, and elements are made in a couple of other places. But this idea of like matter and atoms moving throughout time and then like taking up residence in like our bodies, because even as like a solid living being, there's a constant shuffle and movement of the atoms in my body and a movement in and out of my body. And then when you die, there's even more of that, right? Because then you've got decomposition and you become a part, the atoms that were you become part of other living things. And then they'll continue on until perpetuity, like after you're long gone. And that was the idea that really started that series. And then also, like, not to get too personal here, and stop me if I'm going on and droning on for too long, because I feel like I'm just talking, which makes sense because it's an interview. But my uncle, who was like one of my closest family members, passed away from cancer probably, God, I think it was like 5 years ago now. And the last card that I wrote him and I read to him the last time that I saw him was about this atomic shuffle. And, he was always a very adventurous person. He kind of like got everyone out of their comfort zones around him and just made life joyful and exciting. And I said to him, like, you were always an explorer. And I think that you were always made to like explore first. And so for me, because I'm not a super religious person, but that idea of that movement of atoms is like where the root of my spirituality kind of lies. It's how I accept that idea of like reincarnation of ourselves in this like greater billions of year story. So.
No, and the reason why I really appreciate you explaining all this, because there is a deeper meaning to these pieces, right? First, aesthetically, they look beautiful. But what I like about it is even if I were to attempt to do something like this, I may put something together, but yours actually has it probably has a meaning. I'm looking at one of your pieces here under the atomic shuffle, where it's a side view person where the skin is gone, right? You're just looking at the muscle, but there's these, what I assume are chemical or molecular, I'm not a scientist, but there's actually something in there that looks like it has a meaning or purpose, which I wouldn't even know as a viewer, other than it looking and appreciating the art. I don't know why that's there, and it makes me infinitely curious why it's there, right? And to your other piece here to its left, I'm looking at this piece where it's like flowers or mushrooms that almost look like an anatomy of a person, where I'm trying to piece it together here. It's like your explanation. This physical form were to pass and you were to disintegrate, so to speak, and merge into Earth. This is my story I'm telling myself based on the visuals without any explanation.
Yeah.
So a follow-up question is, when you're visually trying to tell the story here, do these molecular structures here, this has a meaning to it, or these are just arbitrary that you put in here because it looks nice?
Yeah, no, especially in that series. Like I'm not going to lie to you, there are sometimes when I'll start a collage and I'm just kind of like playing around. And sometimes it turns into something. And, halfway through, I'll be like, oh, this is where I want this to go. And this is what I want to say. And then I'll be doing things more purposefully. With those pieces, with the Atomic Shuffle pieces, I had a really strong, and I continue to make them. So it's like an ongoing series, that I'll just kind of keep adding to as I think of things. But those, like, I have a really strong idea of what I want to say before I go in. So there's one piece in there called The Evolution of Love. And there's a molecular structure that's like next to a guy that is like just his muscular body. He doesn't have skin on him.
Yeah, this is the one I'm referring to, actually.
Yeah, I figured it was. Yeah, that's actually oxytocin. So oxytocin is a hormone in our bodies that is released when we hug someone or when we're bonded to them. It's released during sex, not to get explicit, but it's thought of as the love or the bonding hormone.
Wow.
But basically, when I was making that piece, I was thinking about the evolution of that hormone and oxytocin in other organisms and what it does. So like if you go onto my Instagram, I wrote a whole thing about this. So like oxytocin has all of these different functions in all of these different animals, and it's not always related to love, but that it's this like molecule that is kind of controlling our behavior. And we always think of ourselves as having free will, but we are chemical, we're like byproducts of these chemical, our decisions are byproducts of like chemical reactions and interactions and like natural selection. And, so that's really what I was trying to say in that piece, is that idea of who's really calling the shots here when something like oxytocin is so significantly affecting our behavior. And it's this chemical molecule inside of our bodies.
Amy, what are the typical responses that, whether it's family or somebody that just meets you for the first time, what are the responses of your work when they see it?
It's really funny because the people that know me really well are like, wow, what you make is really weird. And I'm like, cool, thanks. And, people are really supportive, but people that I know in my life are super supportive, but they don't, not everyone has just the breadth of learning about this stuff their whole life. Like, this is all I've learned and
Sure.
talked about my whole life, right? So I also have to be open and aware of that. Like, even me talking now, I'm like, oh my God, am I saying too much? Like, am I going too far when I'm talking about this stuff and boring people? But I would say when I meet people at shows, a lot of the people that come up to me and talk to me about it are really excited about the concepts and about applying them to their own lives. So like a lot of people that come up to me will say like, my wife has this, she had to have open heart surgery. I had this whole like hour-long conversation with this man that I met at a show, and we got to talking, and his wife had actually like made a podcast, and he ended up buying a piece. But those are the kinds of conversations I have with people, like such personal things that they'll share with me based on what they're seeing. And people will ask me what a piece means, and sometimes I have a good answer, and sometimes I kind of ask them what they think, and their answer is far better than anything I could ever come up with. So like, I think with all art, what's important is what it means to the person that is admiring it and possibly purchasing it and putting it in their home, and looking at it. Like, the onlooker really creates the meaning. And so like everything has an intent when I make it, when I talk about it, but I really like hearing what other people say about it. And that can be a lot of themes that have come up have been like female empowerment comes up a lot with my pieces, because that's an obvious theme that I kind of thread through what I'm doing. But also just this idea of like people who have family members who are sick or have been sick, or they're, I've had people contact me or in relationships with someone who has like certain medical issues, and these pieces mean a lot to them. Like I had a woman do a commission, and her father had pulmonary fibrosis and he survived. And so she actually commissioned a piece, and it was like really, really special to be a part of that story for those people.
Are those, like, I would assume, for many, many other reasons, is probably one of the awesome parts of being an artist, right? Could you shed light on, in your opinion, what do you enjoy the most about being an artist?
Yeah, that's really easy for me to answer. I think I enjoy the communication aspect of it. So I enjoy how it falls on people. I enjoy people's response to what I make. And, I enjoy it when people take what I'm making and they give it, like I was just saying, their own meaning. And it becomes it becomes, I don't know, really powerful for them. Because first of all, the main reason why I make what I make is because I'm trying to communicate ideas about science that I think would, if I were reading them, they would change my perspective. Like the way when I read that book by Neil deGrasse Tyson, I don't know if I said the name, I think I did, but it was Death by a Black Hole. And I've read so many science books. I'm like a science nonfiction nerd, but he really changed my perspective in like a couple of words. And the power of being able to do that, of being able to look at the world in a completely different way by looking at a painting or a collage, I should say, I think that that's my favorite part about being an artist. And there's nothing wrong with this, but when you look at Instagram, I have a hard time with Instagram because I know I'm chatty right now and it sounds like I really like talking about myself. But if you look at my Instagram feed, you'll see that like I don't really like putting myself out there because I really want the message that I'm getting across to be about the things that I'm talking about in the pieces that I release, not about me and my process. Like that's just not my thing. I'm also 42 and I feel like I'm past the like I can handle making a video. I can't, like I'm not that person. I'm not that person. Like I can barely handle a remote control. So but I would say my favorite part is just like going through the process of making a piece, thinking about what it means to me, and then communicating that. And like that could even look like me going and looking for quotes. I mean, there's a couple of scientists and authors that I really love. And like Oliver Sacks is one of them. Like if you want to have a good rabbit hole moment, look up Oliver Sacks quotes and he will just knock you on your butt because everything that came out of his mouth was unbelievable. Like this unbelievable science communicator. Or Carl Sagan is like an easy one.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, and obviously Einstein is like, the OG of amazing science quotes. But like even just thinking about like, what do I want to place with a piece and how do I want to curate it? That is also like a really big part of the communication for me as well.
Yeah, let me follow up on that because as a creative myself, when I reflect back to all my work, I find that the pieces that I particularly have most fond of, or more, maybe the better word is, I'm proud of them because I went through a journey of difficulty of trying to push the concept or the execution or the craftsmanship as far as I can, where I'm into a space where I'm uncomfortable because I'm just like any other human. I want to be comfortable. I don't want to be uncomfortable, but I know that uncomfortability means that I've pushed myself further than that I want to. And it usually results in something that I'm particularly proud of. And so to follow up on that with your work, I guess, how do you actually, like, in quotes, deem that this is a piece that this is my favorite? Or how do you know when you hit it out of the park in your own work?
Right. I made a piece. So sometimes I'll post a piece, honestly, because I make a lot of collages. So I usually make one every other day. So sometimes I make a piece and I love it. I'm like, everyone's gonna love this. And then it'll be like 24 hours later and I have 100 likes. And I'm like, oh, okay, I guess no one liked it. That's fine. And I have to kind of look at that and be like, I wonder why. Or I just have to shake it off and be like, maybe it just didn't get past with the algorithm. I hate to say that even out loud, that's what I'm thinking about, but it's true as someone who shares their work on that platform. But I would say normally for me, and this is kind of strange, it's the easy pieces that are the ones where I'm like, oh my God, I know this is good. I love this. It's usually the ones that I'm struggling through and I'm kind of like trying to make work. And it's in a different way than you're saying it. Like I'll be like working on a piece and I'm like, it's just not working. It's just not working. And it's hard for me to walk away, but sometimes I have to just walk away and be like, maybe I just won't use any of this at all. The pieces that I tend to like the most are the ones that just come together like super seamlessly, like the fastest, because for whatever reason, it's working from the start when I'm putting it together. And then I just go off on these little tangents and everything, and every little thing I do may not work when I'm making it. But like overall, like I know from the beginning, there's confidence there. Like those are the pieces that I'm typically the most proud of. And they're usually the pieces that I have the best reception from people about. And also my favorite pieces are the ones where I have something really purposeful to say before I even start them.
I really particularly like I don't know if it's called the Brain series. I just love it because it's like the brain is always in the middle of the art space, but the story around it is always different in each one of these. And there's one called Motherly Love where the brain is inside the hip bone, right? And the hip bone looks like a butterfly. And I love how you put butterflies around this particular piece, but I love that particular piece. So let me ask you here a couple more questions. Can you talk a little bit about people that are fans of your work, how they can obtain your work, how they can get some of your pieces here?
Yeah, sure thing. I have an Etsy shop. I'm actually going to be rehauling my Etsy shop very soon. So I just started working with super great. I do Like I don't print myself. I have an outside print company print my pieces for me. And so I am actually switching companies like right now. Like I had a talk with someone earlier today. So on my Etsy shop, you may see some changes happening there over the next couple weeks, but you can get to my Etsy shop through my website, or actually, if you click on the link in my bio on my Instagram, you can get to my Etsy shop. But that's one way. And then also, I love commissions. They're like my favorite thing to do because I love people giving me free inspiration to make a piece. It's amazing. I don't have to think of ideas on my own. They could just tell me what they want or like what they want, the idea, the overall feeling that they want it to have, and then it's great. So yeah, so I love working on people with commissions. I've worked on one of my favorite people that I work with. I love everyone I work with, but like one of the people that I work with the most is actually a doctor, and he makes anatomical books for children, like this whole series, which is super cool. So I've made a lot of pieces for him. I've made pieces for people for their family members. I've worked on like book art and let's say album art. So like I love a good commission. So anyone that wants to contact me about it, I'm here for you.
You've done album art, huh?
Yeah. It's actually adorable because it's not adorable. If they actually listen to this, they'd be like, adorable, Amy, really? We're not adorable. We're a hard rock band, or we think we were hard rock. But it was actually this great group of like surgeons, and they are also in a band. And so they contacted me, and I made their album art cover for them. And so that was really fun. Just working with a bunch of surgeons was really fun. But yeah, so so
Wow.
I ended up working a lot with people in the medical community because like they are the people that maybe it's through the way that I'm communicating, and who ends up seeing it on social media, but they're the people that end up getting in touch with me. But I would love to work with honestly anybody. So
Amy, from the beginning, from when you started and decided to, I guess, really put a lot of time and energy to being an artist, Ernie, has there been anything about this creative career that has really surprised you?
That is really a good question. I feel like maybe the support from people I don't know has surprised me. And I'm not trying to be like I can't believe people even look at what I'm like. I know that, but like people come back at me and everyone is positive, and I think of social media maybe because I'm like 42 and I was alive before computers were really a thing.
Mhm.
But I kind of think of social media as always being like nasty a little bit. And honestly, like Instagram has really kept me going. Like the people that like my art and that I talk to through Instagram and that support me and I support them, like it's such a good community. And that was really surprising to me. But also like as far as what surprised me about making art, I feel like I should be like a spokesperson for them, but like how awesome Photoshop is. Like just I had Photoshop for years because I had it as part of my job. I needed to use it for like students' work. I had it for years and I didn't even know anything about it. I'm like, this is just way too complicated. And then I started working with it. I'm like, this is, like I was saying earlier, it's like you could create a whole universe with this thing. Like it's unbelievable.
It's so powerful. I mean,
It's so
I've been using
amazing.
it for 20 years and I can't even confidently tell you I know 20% of it because
Right.
there's so many things you can do. And if you do one thing over and over again, you may get stuck on that one path of what you do
I
in
know.
Photoshop, but there's like so many possibilities. But it's interesting you say that about your art because I wonder if you ever, when you started embarking into art, did you ever feel like, I would assume a part of some artists that when they do this, they feel like it's a solo effort. I mean, how many people would actually look at my work or have dialogue about my work? Were you pretty surprised that you have a pretty, what it sounds like a healthy communication with a lot of different people that like your work? You're doing album covers, you're doing commissions, there's engagement and you're in page. I mean, were you pretty surprised how quickly that happened?
Yeah, okay, so I'm a type A personality. So I like things to happen fast.
Mm.
I'm like, I want 70, 80,000 Instagram followers. And so like, honestly, like, first of all, I was when I first started making, I had such such positive feedback when I really started making these pieces and putting them out there. And the people, some of them are still supporting me. You know, some of them have kind of gone away over the last like year. I honestly have only been making these kinds of collages. Like I've been an artist for a long time and I've been collaging for a long time, but I only really got this aspect of it and started posting consistently in the last year and a half. Yeah. So the people that have like supported me, where was I going with this? Have been like just such a moving part of what I do because, you know, I'm just kind of blown away with them going out of the way to support a stranger so much, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I do it too, though. Like I geek out about artists on Instagram all the time. And then I just like gush to them on their social media. I think I scared one of them, to be honest with you. I wrote in this like message. We were writing back and forth like pretty friendly, and then I wrote him this message just like how awesome I thought he was, and I think I may have frightened him. But yeah, so you know, I don't like I said, I don't even know where I was. What was the question you asked me? I think I lost it somewhere.
No, I think you answered it perfectly.
Okay.
I was just curious to hear your perspective on just that synergy of like community, right?
Right.
But when I was growing up and I was an artist as well, taking art in school, and I thought myself personally it was a solo endeavor. And then I started realizing there is a community of artists, community of, in your case, you have two communities, right? And some people really tap into the community aspect of being an artist, and some may not even know about it, right? A lot of people that celebrate each other's gifts and creativity and what they're putting out in the world. So I just wanted to see if you recognize that and how you felt about it.
Right. Just to add on to that, like, I don't know how people did this before social media. You know, I mean, it's so hard for me to like put myself out there. And let's say I've been in some shows before, some local shows that I've applied for, but to put myself out there and like apply or submit my work to a gallery, that's a fairly new concept. And like the fact that an artist in the past, that was like how you got seen was, you know, you have these gatekeepers, and now those gatekeepers are gone. I mean, they're not gone. They're still there and they're still important, but you have this opportunity with social media to basically make something for yourself. I think what can be frustrating for me is the only frustration I see is because my artwork is so kind of niche, I think it limits. It's like I don't want to change what I do, but I do understand that I think it's always going to limit like the people that are looking at what I'm making, if that makes sense. Because it's so heavily based in like these scientific concepts, and not everyone is that interested in them. And there's usually some sort of anatomy on a piece, and not everyone wants to see the inside of their body.
Okay, that's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah,
I didn't think of it in that way. Amy, I really want to thank you for sharing with us your creative journey. I've enjoyed your work, and I've enjoyed you telling us a little bit about your background. And can you remind us, listeners, where they can connect with you again and, you know, purchase your fantastic pieces?
Yeah, great. Thank you. And thank you for having me. Thank you so much. And my Instagram is at forms_most_beautiful. And my website is www.formsmostbeautiful.com.
Fantastic. And listeners, please connect with Amy, and thank you again for listening to our show. Until next time, take care.